We're here to talk about today what very well might be one of the 2 or 3 most important things that are going to be happening in the city of Austin and Travis County over the next year. And this is the lead up to the census count that happens every 10 years. Every 10 years, pursuant to the United States Constitution, everyone who lives in the United States needs to be counted. I want to talk first about just how important this is, how important it is for our community that everyone gets counted. It determines the number of seats that Austin and Travis County have in the United States Congress. It determines how district lines are drawn, not only for those congressional seats and for state senate and the House of Representatives at the federal level and the state level, but even city council seats and county commissioner seats. The district lines are drawn that way. Most importantly, this census count directs how about $800 billion of federal funding is allocated across communities in the country. And if Austin and Travis County are to get their fair share, it is imperative that everyone who lives here gets counted. The funding sources, the funding programs that are impacted by this are the programs that we all know and recognize. It's Medicaid and Medicare. It's the state Children's Health Insurance Program, or CHIP. It's Section 8 housing. It's the affordable housing support and monies that come into communities. It's the Title I grants to local education agencies. It's educating our children. It's the National School Lunch Program. It's making sure that everyone in our community has enough to eat and healthy foods. It's the special education grants, Head Start and early Head Start programs in our community. It's also highway planning and highway construction dollars allocated based on counting everyone who lives in our city and our county. The fact that it is so important means that as a community, we need to help make sure that everyone gets counted. And there are some populations in our community that are sometimes harder to reach and more challenging to make sure that they're counted. More barriers set up that prevent parts of communities from being counted in the way that they should. Very young children, immigrants in our community, people who live in rural areas, people of color, people who may move their residences more frequently, people with language barriers. These communities are all a little bit more difficult to count, and it's important that we communicate and message to those communities that here in Austin and Travis County, that everyone counts. Everyone who lives here counts. And while the counting will take place a year from now, so we're talking about in April through June of 2020, it's something that we have to start talking about now, because we want to make sure that everyone gets comfortable with being counted. We want everyone to know that this is a confidential process, that people who participate, this information is encrypted and only kept with the census agencies. It is not turned over to immigration. It's not turned over to ICE. It's not turned over to Homeland Security. This is a place where folks can feel free and secure in making sure that they participate in this and they get counted, because getting counted is the clearest and most direct way to ensuring that you have power, that your family has power, that our city and our county has the power to improve everyone's lives. I'm really excited, as you see behind us, many people in the community getting together, this time earlier and in greater strength than we ever have before in a 10-year count, because this is so important. Again, just leaving with the message that everybody counts, that we all count, and we all need to be comfortable with the process that's coming up, because it is safe and secure and people are protected. I want to turn the dais over to the county judge, who's helping to lead our effort as a region. Judge.
Thank you so much, Mayor. This is really exciting work. This is just a tremendous group that's been amassed as our Complete Count Committee. I hope that every person who lives in Travis County can see themselves reflected in some way in our Complete Count Committee. I could not be more thankful to you all for your participation and your commitment that every Travis County resident be counted, because every Travis County resident counts. So no matter where you lay your head in Travis County, we want you and your participation in this effort. We have roughly 23 municipalities and villages inside Travis County. We have approximately 19 school districts that have territory inside Travis County. So no matter where you live, whether it's in a dorm room or whether it's in Del Valley, whether it is in Manor or it's in Lakeway, whether you are laying your head on a pillow in a high-rise in downtown Austin, or whether you're laying your head on a pillow at the Arch, we want your participation. You are our neighbor, and we want to make sure that all of us and all of our neighbors are counted, whether you say your evening prayers in English or Spanish, whether you say them in Tagalog, Cantonese, or Sanskrit. We want your participation. Thank you so much to all of you for helping us reach out to every resident and giving them the assurance of knowing that we all belong. Thank you so much. And with that, I will stand aside for Maria.
Thank you. Thank you, Judge Eckhart. I would just like to encourage our communities to really participate in our Complete Count committees, really think about coming to work for this census, in order to encourage our communities of color to participate and get counted and receive funding that we depend on every day. It's really incumbent upon all of our communities to either come and work for the census or volunteer, going door to door and ensuring that we're not left out of the table, that we're not left out of these important conversations that, again, our communities depend on every day. Early childhood initiatives, child care grants, Head Start, national school lunch programs, all of these vital resources that our communities depend on every day. We just encourage and also want to emphasize that the information that is shared on the census will be kept confidential. It is not going to be shared with anyone, and please do not be afraid to participate in the census as a result. Por favor, la comunidad latina participa en nuestro censo del 2020. Su información es muy importante para recursos que nuestra comunidad depende cada día, para las escuelas, para comida, para asistencia de salud. Por favor, participan en nuestro censo de 2020. Gracias.
So my name is Cristina Sensun Ramirez, and I'm the founder and executive director of JOLT, an organization that gets more young Latinos out to vote here in Texas. And we know that this coming census is one of the most important functions of our entire country in democracy. And at JOLT, we are waking up every single day talking about the census, because we know that as Latinos, we make up 40% of the state's population. But many of the young people I work with think that we make up 10 or 15% of Texas because they don't see themselves reflected. And so what is on the line with the census is, yes, how many dollars we get for our schools, how many dollars we get for our hospitals, how we build our roadways, but also on the line is the entire way our democracy works, because this is how we represent ourselves, how we see ourselves reflected. And in this state, we know how important the census is. I am like a third of Texans. I am the proud child of an immigrant. A third of Texans, 1 in 3 Texans, are immigrants or children of immigrants. a third. So if we don't actually make sure our communities get counted, and especially because there is so much fear in this community right now, regardless of citizenship, but in immigrant communities and foreign-born communities and communities of color that right now fear our government. I know that some people in power want to weaponize the census against our community so that we don't get counted because they fear our power. But to our community, I say that we are going to make sure we get counted. We are going to make sure we arm ourselves so that we arm ourselves with the resources and tools so that we can win our community the power and respect we deserve, and we do that through the U.S. Census. The census is how we determine as a nation our wants, our needs, our present, and our future. And that we're going to make sure that we together as Texas and a nation determine our future that represents the diversity of who we are as a country today. And that is what the census is really about. So for me, it is about all of those resources, but it is also a way to arm our communities with the true power, representation, and resources that we fully deserve. And that's how I think about the census, and that's how I want us all to think about the census. And to also know that as Texans, we are in one of the most important states in the country that could be undercounted. And as Texans, we're incredibly proud, and we don't like to be left out. So don't you dare try and undercount us or leave us out, and that we as a community are going to come together to make sure every single Texan gets counted, because we know as Texans that we deeply matter. Quiero decir en español, do you want me to do it in español? Quiero decir que el censo que viene, el año que viene, es algo muy, muy importante para nuestra comunidad. Que no solamente se trata de los recursos para nuestras escuelas, hospitales, que es sumamente importante, pero sabemos que unos en poder no quieren contar a los inmigrantes en nuestra comunidad porque saben que somos poderosos, que saben que tenemos la habilidad de decidir un nuevo futuro para nuestro estado y comunidad. Cuando alguien no te quiere contar o alguien no te quiere ver, tú llegas para que ellos puedan mirar tu poder. Tú llegas a decir, yo cuento, mi familia cuenta, mi futuro cuenta. Eso es lo que estamos haciendo cuando vamos y llenamos el censo. No solamente es un papel, pero es para determinar nuestro futuro como comunidad. Así tenemos que pensar del censo. Entonces quiero decir a toda mi comunidad que somos poderosos y este es nuestro momento para ser contados y demostrar que no vamos a detenernos por el miedo. Gracias.
Well, talking about the immigrant community, we have heard rumors, we have heard, ideas coming from the president and other leaders that they want to put the question of the immigration status in the census. We know that this might not happen, but what would you say to the people that have heard this and are afraid to participate because of that?
Yeah, I just want to reemphasize that, the information that the census will collect, has gone through several layers of encryption, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation. And so the information is not collected on an individual level. And I know many people, especially our Latino community, don't realize, when they answer the question, they think, oh, it's going to be on a personal level, and it's not. It's just on housing unit level. And I know a lot of our communities also are afraid because they live in shared housing, or a grandparent might be raising a grandchild, or a child goes back and forth between their parents' households. So they don't even think they should count their kids, but everybody should be counted to continue to receive resources that they depend on every day. And I just want to reemphasize that the information will be kept confidential. And I know there's been concern that whether or not the question gets left on, there's still going to be that fear. So I ask again that we encourage the Latino and Black and Asian community to come and work for the census, so that we can help build the trust back into the community. And whether or not it gets put on, it is going to be kept confidential.
When do we know if it's going to be put on?
We're supposed to hear back, I think, in June. June is what we're hearing.
En español, ¿verdad? Creo que es importante que nuestra comunidad entiende que unos en el gobierno no quieren que seamos contados. Eso es la verdad, pero no sabemos si la cuestión va a estar en el censo o no, pero que es importante es que lo llenamos, lo entregamos, porque el gobierno ya sabe dónde viven todos los inmigrantes, es la verdad, ¿verdad? Pero en este momento, este es nuestro momento para ser contados. Y la información no va a ser compartida con otros departamentos del gobierno como la migración, y la gente debe ser contado. Este es nuestro momento para demostrar nuestro poder y demostrar a nuestros hijos, especialmente los que son grandes o si son jóvenes, que este gobierno, este país, este estado es nuestro, y no vamos a dejar que unas personas no nos cuentan, que no nos toman en cuenta, cuenta que todo esto es un modo para defender nuestra comunidad. El censo es una manera para defender nuestra comunidad. Así es de serio el censo.
¿Va a ser opcional poner sí o no?
Sí, es opcional.
So we're a year away from the actual count. I'm wondering why we're, having this extra push, like a year ahead.
That's a great question. It's because in the past census, we kind of got a late start. And again, a lot of people don't realize that so much funding is tied to the census, so they don't really even know how it affects them on a personal level. So the hope is that the earlier we get started, the more momentum and informative strategies that we can do for our community. If we get a head start, we won't miss out when the day of the census actually comes. So it's a great question. It's because in past census we've gotten too late of a start, and as a result, Travis County has been left out of significant funding because we had such a high undercount in the last census. And actually, between 2000 and 2010, for Black and Latino communities, that percentage actually went up instead of down. So the hope is that with each census, we encourage communities of color to participate, and that number will go up, but it's actually gone down. I mean, the undercount has gone up.
Also, historically, historically, Texas has underperformed in the count as compared to the national average. So even in previous census efforts, we've not even achieved the national average for response rate at Travis County or at the city of Austin either. So even in those previous instances, we were found lacking, and in the current circumstance, the federal government has not supplied the same level of assistance as they have in the past either. So with this superheated environment where there is considerable fear, as well as an underfunded effort at the federal level, as well as a historic undercounting at the state and the local level, it was important for us to get started early and really make this a priority in our community. Mayor?
I think we're starting a year early before the count for two really big reasons. And I'll repeat the first that many people have spoken to. We've been leaving money on the table. We can't afford to do that. We need to get all of the resources that we can possibly get, that we're entitled to get, that this community deserves and has earned. So the first reason is so that we don't leave resources on the table. The second reason we're starting a year early is to make sure that people feel comfortable with the process. People fear what they don't know. It's the kind of the unknown element. And if we're going to make sure that we don't leave any money on the table, it's going to be because everyone in our community is ready and feels comfortable with participating. And that's going to take us talking about it now for a year, to answer people's questions, to build the trust and that's necessary for people to want and to be eager to participate, to help this community get everything that it deserves.